Eric Lopez here alongside Kyle Nash. This is Night Shift here at the Bounce House. Normally we'd be on live, but we're still digesting what just happened here, ladies and gentlemen. A game, Kyle, that we thought would be historic, and it was historic, but for the wrong reasons. As UCF loses to Baylor 36-35, Baylor's greatest comeback in program history, scoring 26 points unanswered in that fourth quarter, Kyle. People are still in shock. I think the easiest question, first of all, is how did this happen?
Well, I'm glad you're stepping up from what the bleep happened last week after K-State. But, yeah, listen, man, first of all, I get frustration that UCF fans were feeling. I actually kind of wish we had a comment section just so you guys could, kind of excise.
I think we can figure out what they're thinking, though.
But, I mean, there's a few things that'll go through. First of all, I know a lot of people are going to throw shade on the defense first. But this was all three phases, folks, okay? Let's be clear. So, first of all, the defense, for example, Eric, didn't give up a 79-whatever-yard fumble return in their own backfield. I know a lot of people are complaining about, the fumble that had happened, and they should there. That was obviously the turning point of the game in the press conference post-game, because Malzahn pretty much agreed the same. But that was just one of several, making a better term, blunders that took place in that short space of time. And there's just a lot of factors. I don't think, it's wrong to say Baylor having their starting quarterback for the first time in a few weeks was a factor. I don't think it's wrong to say that the offense, I got it here. I'll go ahead and cheat and look there. I think they were 5 for 13 on third downs. That's a factor. The defense giving up 10 of 18 on the night. They're out there on the field for, what do we have here? 35 minutes.
Well, let's address that, because the first half, the time of possession was dominated by Baylor, but UCF scored quick bunches. Did that catch up with UCF? Did that play a factor into UCF defensively not being able to slow down Baylor, and the fact that UCF just couldn't stay on the field?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. And remember, Eric, I've said it many times on this edition of Night Shift, of Night Shift throughout the year, that you can find on the blackandgoldbannerette.com. Bing! See, we don't have the soundboard. So
it's not a good day for those sound bites and fun here.
Not going to happen there. But what I can say, Eric, is when your defense starts in the middle of the line, like the defensive tackles, stamina is going to be a factor if you're on the field that long, right? And we know that the big guys in the middle drive this defense in their success. And if they're on the field for most of the night, that's a big deal. I don't know how much the defensive ends got rotated out. I think that was a factor there, too. We talked last week about the linebackers and they're getting exposed. So as the defensive tackles get tired, the linebackers need to make plays. They're not. There's a lot of that going on. And I know that, I had a friend of mine text me, we need to fire Addison Williams. This wasn't an Addison Williams loss. It's not a Darren Hinshaw loss. All three faces had little moments. And it's funny, Eric, on Monday, Kobe Hudson and Lee Hunter both said that the biggest thing that they need to account for in the Big 12, when they play the Big 12, are getting those little details right. You saw it on display here in this game.
Do you believe, when UCF up 35-10, do you think some of the players thought the game was over?
You have to think they did. I know the fans did. They left a lot of they left in a great mass, thinking that it was in I guess I should say they thought it was in the bag,
I did.
But yeah, a lot of people did. But Baylor had other plans.
Well, the thing, you talk about the defense. The thing that I think people point to, you give up the 2 touchdowns and the 2 two-point conversions, which looms big. And think about the field goal block. Unfortunately, we're going to be just thinking about every situation. The play that everybody brought up to me, literally outside, because I didn't get to go to post-game because we had a lot of people, Nelson, who watches the show, everything. Shout out to all the people that tune in. Thank you, first of all. Mm-hmm. But the question that everybody asked me, why are we running a wild night on 3rd and 6, Kyle? That's the question I was getting outside. What is your reaction to that?
Well, so why are we running the Wildcat, the 5-cat we were calling back when it was Jordan McDonald that was running? Why are we doing that on 3rd and 6? I think that's the wrong question, thoroughly, because you're examining that because that's where the bad play happened. If they don't fumble the ball, we're not having this conversation, right? At the end of the day, for me, I think it's a lot of the other things that need to be asked about. For example, what happened with the mishandled snap that caused Boomer to miss that early kick that he was supposed to get? What happened in the situation with the call on Kobe Hudson? Gus after the game said he thought that was a bit of a ticky-tack foul. He didn't use those words, but I believe his phrase is that was tough. That's translation for
Sure.
I didn't really dig that call. There was an illegal formation that I don't know if it resulted in a touchdown that got called back, but it did result in a first down. And the play after that, Eric, was Timmy McClain's interception, right?
But there's a consistent theme there, and that's the sloppiness that I brought up at the Kansas State game. A lot of people saying, hey, you're overreacting. That was a good Kansas State team. My argument was the sloppiness is going to get you beat, and it feels like it did again here, Kyle.
Well, let me harken back to the Kansas State game this way, Eric. The sloppiness isn't so much that they make a mistake. It's the mistakes compound on each other, right?
Yeah.
Going back to Kansas State, what was it? It was, even though Drew doesn't want to admit it, the game started to end in K-State when the 15-yard penalty happened on Trayvon Morris-Brash, and then it all started to happen again as another foul followed it. And then the offense had its struggles, that compounded themselves there too, right? After Timmy McClain's big thing last week, the boomer kick, all of that. Tonight, the missed, the callback touchdown to Xavier Townsend on the pick play that was called. That came after. What came after that? The mishandled snap that led to the boomer miss. Right there's that cascade. I mentioned earlier the legal formation call that was then followed by the 3rd and 15 where the interception was forced by Timmy McClain.
Yep.
It's not that they're making mistakes, Eric, is that they're cascading them all together at the same time.
But that's going to get you beat in this league.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the talking points. This ain't the American.
A talking point the players brought on Monday, Eric. That's my point.
Well, let's address this. You were in the press conference right after this game. I was outside talking to some people. I noticed it took a little while, which was expected. Take me through that post-game locker. What did Gus have to say in the tone? What was the tone like?
I think Gus, whenever a coach goes into the life lesson conversation, that's when you know it's a bad night, right? And he said, listen, this is a lesson we thought we learned at K-State. And the guys all feel like crap, and they should. And I don't think anyone argues that. And I think what Gus has to do as a coach right now is to keep the group from mulling in it. And because there's a tough game on the road coming up next week. I think Kansas is a
quarterback Daniels was a scratch against Texas. Apparently, has a back issue light up. We don't know the severity of it, but he did not play against Texas. Texas blew out Kansas. So you got two teams hurting for completely different ways. I think the big question now. Let's address the elephant in the room. Gus said in the postgame that John Rice Plumlee was cleared literally Friday. Did not practice all week. That's why he did not play. But he's going to be back for Kansas.
He didn't say that.
But
he's going to practice. I think they're going to try to practice.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to be back for the coming game, Eric. At least I hope not, and let me tell you why. A John Rice Plumlee 100% is the only way you start him back. We went through 85% speed JRP, and we saw what happened. And Timmy McClain, say what you will about the outcomes of the games, has done an admirable job as a backup and leading the offense. He was asked to do an awful lot at the end of that game. And he fell short perhaps on that with 1:21 left.
Would you make him the backup? First of all, I think if he's 100%, they're going to play him. I don't think they're going to throw him out there if he's like 40%. All right?
Sure.
That being said, remember, they go to Kansas, then they have the bye week before Oklahoma. Could you dress him as a backup if things don't get off? It's going to be interesting. We're not going to find out throughout the week. They're not going to say much. But the fact that he's cleared, and I think they're going to see how practice goes, and we literally may not know until literally the first snap.
Well, here's where I'm at with that, though. You mentioned Kansas and then the bye week. That means for 100%, well, I shouldn't say 100%, but there's a high likelihood that Oklahoma is the target because they'll have that bye week to recover.
And I think we all felt that way, right?
We had mentioned something similar to that on the night shift a couple weeks back. Bing! So with all that in mind, I think you have to still continue to target the Oklahoma game for the return.
I think I trust them in that they're going to see how practice goes, and if he can go, they're going to play him. If he can't, if he's not 100, I think they won't play him. But Timmy, you say Timmy was admirable. There was some good, there was some not so good.
As you'll get any case with a backup quarterback, right? And I think there's only two throws that I don't think should have been made, and one of them unfortunately was intercepted, such that it was. But an argument could be made. Gus Malzahn mentioned that illegal formation is something he's been running since 1996 as a bit of subtle shade to be thrown, one could argue. If that's something, again, that works, we're not seeing that throw even attempted from the 3rd and long that it happened.
Well, the other issue, but even the last drive, he went short. You have no timeouts left, and he went short for like a 2-3 yard gain, and they had to quickly spike the ball. That was dangerous. There were some decisions that you're like, even that play, which would have been, if they would have won this game, this would have been one of the most miraculous plays ever, where he's chased down by the defenders. He's going all the way to the end zone, throws it up, and it was caught for a first down. It's one of the, if they would have won this game, we'd be talking about this as one of the most incredible plays, but it's just, there's some uneasiness. I was like, whoa, and there's a lot of like stuff that I could see why some people are kind of like holding their breath at times.
Well, in that instance, I feel like John Rice Plumlee, again, would have done a similar thing. And granted, maybe he would have been able to escape better because he's just a little faster.
I think he's a better athlete. I think he would have been more, he would have just taken off.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen his prowess in two sports, man. Listen, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But with all that in mind, I think for all the criticism he got last week for holding onto the ball too long, there were a few times where he went through progressions, where he extended plays, and it actually worked out for the offense both times he really did it at any length in this football game. I don't want to call it a full element of luck because he made a good throw and a good catch was made, but it was that extension and length of time in the play that made that even possible.
Well, let's make this clear.
Yeah.
By the way, this is therapy session right now, at least for me. Hopefully for you. You mentioned it. Perfect point. That this has to be highlighted. This is going to be highlighted, I would think, in your night class article. Mm-hmm. Timmy McClain's not the reason why they lost this game. The defense is not the reason why they lost. Everybody contributed in this loss. This is a team loss. You don't lose a 25-point lead because of one aspect of the game or two. This was combined. And listen, Baylor made plays. They didn't give up. Like I ran into a couple Baylor people. They're like, that's the first fight they've shown all year. This could be a turning point for them with Dave Aranda. That's, whatever. That doesn't make me feel better, but I'm just saying they didn't quit. And I'm telling you, Big 12 is crazy like this. These are games that have happened in Big 12. Not to this degree, I get it, and I'm not excusing it, but I think the lesson to be learned here in the Big 12, anything's possible, to quote Kevin Garnett, and we saw that, unfortunately, at UCF's expense here. You got to play 60 minutes, Kyle.
Well, and I think this is a point you've made throughout the year going into it, and I think it's the time to hearken to it, right? UCF has to understand the transition from underdog to power team, right? And in this case, I believe they were favored against a Power 5 team.
Anywhere from 8 to 11, depending on where you look.
And they're used to getting favored a lot in the past. That's a thing that happened. But G5 teams might quit where these guys keep fighting. And I think that's another important
Well,
element.
and something I was told too, like from some people, that size for Baylor, you mentioned the time of possession, that takes its toll. If you're the smaller defense, again, I'm not making excuses. They should have won this game. All right. I'm just telling you how this happened. We're trying to explain.
You're not making excuses. You're giving reasons, Eric. Yeah.
And their line wore down. And to your point, defense was on the field too long, and they're not as big as the offensive line. We liked them. We complimented the defensive line. But I think we're finding out, Kyle, even that defensive line right now, it's just too small for some of these offensive line in the Big 12. It's early. It's only 2 games. But it definitely played a factor here. I think those guys got worn down on both sides of the ball. Although I thought the O-line was okay.
The O-line did an excellent job tonight.
Yeah,
there was a lot of excellent running prowess. And how much time Timmy McClain had. Listen, you can talk to me about size difference all you want to. It took me longer to go up to get a drink in the press box than it did, or rather, he was held safe, Timmy McClain, for a more amount of time. I could get a drink and come back to my seat by the time he was forced to throw in a lot of cases.
You made an interesting comment to me. We were on the field in the last 5 minutes as Baylor was driving for the field goal. And you're like, Baylor's going into their 4-minute drive. And my question to you is, does UCF have a 4-minute drive? Because that could, if they would have had a 4-minute drive in that fourth quarter, they could have avoided this. But it just didn't happen. You could go back to the Wildcat and the fumble and all that. But that was, to me, the telling thing is at the end, Baylor, they were cruising in that drive. They were confident that they were going to move the ball slowly and try to make this a one possession. UCF just didn't have that. They didn't have that 4-minute drive in that fourth quarter to just put this game over. And the question is that just an aberration or is this a concern moving forward?
Right. I'll say this. If I'm Darren Hinshaw, this question I'm scared to get tomorrow night from the media at large, such as they are, is they're going to ask me if I called this game scared towards the end of the game. And that Wildcat call is calling scared, in my opinion. You felt like you needed a gadget when you have home runs early in the game. RJ Harvey has been prominent running the football. The offensive line's opening holes. Why did you feel like you needed a gadget to get the job done?
Get an extra blocker, perhaps?
Well, and that's why you do the Wildcat period. But again, if you're that worried, if it shows a lack of confidence in your squad, if you feel like you.
I think specifically, let me ask you this: do they run that play if Plumlee's the quarterback?
Probably.
You think so?
I do.
See, I think they don't because Plumlee. They might just run the play for Plumlee.
Okay, then draw a design, why not draw or run a design run for Timmy then too? He's got the speed to do that.
That's the question. I wonder if they just don't trust him because of the
And that's the coaching scared.
Maybe, but I mean, to your point, you mentioned this. If the ball runs up the middle, they get a first down. We're not having this conversation, right? And we all said, the running back's the strength of, there's all this talent.
R.J. Harvey's the best offensive
player. How about don't fumble the ball?
Yeah. That's of course. I mean, obviously it starts there.
Well, I just want to defend the coach. Like, we're always going to go to the coaching play call. The players have to do their part.
But the use of the Wildcat has had a bit of an epidemic, and I think that's the question fans are asking. I don't dislike it, but the question has to be, and by the way, while we're here, so we can come up with something positive, blocking away from the ball by the O-line was fantastic tonight. R.J. Harvey in pass protection was great. Alec Haller in run blocking was fantastic. And Kobe Hudson had the dang pancake of the game on UCF's first touchdown, that long deal.
It was beautiful for 3 quarters. That was just so crazy. Look, Kyle, I'll be honest.
One might even say that the game was incomplete. There's a bit of a spoiler if you're paying attention.
You heard that? Night class. I've been going to sporting events for 25 years. Been going to football games for 25 years. I've covered many of them for close to 2 decades. I can honestly tell, I'm not hyperventilating this. I have never seen a game turn of events like what we witness here. With me personally, I'm not going to.
But you were on the winning side against Memphis in 2018 in Memphis.
They weren't down 20. 25 going to the fourth quarter.
That many points, but they were down a lot.
They did turn it around in the second half. I've seen halves, not literally. Like,
it's the speed of the comeback.
That's the shocking. I think a lot of us are. I'm shocked. At least I'm going to speak for myself. I am shocked.
No, it's a shocking event.
I am stunned. I've never been this stunned. I've seen it all. We've all seen it. Wacky comebacks in sports. UCF 2 point. Look, they honored the Fiesta Bowl team who made a whole season out of dramatic, wacky comebacks,
including the track meet that they beat Baylor at before. And you got to think some of that's a factor too. They were hearing about the Fiesta Bowl anniversary, blah blah. That had to have been a whole.
Well, we're even now, or to some extent. I mean, I'll still take the Fiesta Bowl.
How much is getting their starting quarterback back, hyping them up? How much is dealing with that? I mean, heck, everybody saw Colorado and Oregon being what it was when they came in there, and Oregon was hearing about Colorado and all that. It's the same sort of concept, and you had to think that those were intangibles that helped fuel Baylor. They wanted this.
All right, let's try to move ahead, and that's a serious question, Kyle, for you. These guys have to find a way to put this behind them and get ready for Kansas. How do you do? I know it's cliche and they're going to say the right things. You get over it, you move on. That is a hard one to get over. Like, that's one that a lot of fans are never going to get over. This is one they're going to be talking about 20, 30 years. So as a player and a coach, you got to get over this somehow. How do you do that?
You embrace the negative. You take the difficulty. You say, hey, doesn't this really suck? And you use that pain as something to just be, I'm too scared to come back to this place to not work my butt off and go do what I need to do to get that done. I really think that's the best use at this point.
If Plumlee comes back and plays and starts, does that help? Because he didn't play this game, and Gus can say we didn't have our leader or one of our leaders at quarterback. Did that help turn the page?
So this is, as much as Drew likes to joke about me.
This is Andrew Glukov he's talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I met for the first time in person. I thought for a while when it was 35-10, we would have a lot of positive to talk about. And we'll get to that down the road.
I mean, I still would have had to miss it because I had to go right, but it was cool to see the group there for a second. Absolutely. But and I think the part that as much as Drew gives me a hard time, jokingly, about my inability to be impartial, I don't think starting Plumlee's the right move. But should they do that, here are the positives. For one, I like the disassociation concept that you build. Plus, man, listen, you've been in a room with JRP. He is a man who just lifts.
I guarantee you he wants to play next week right now.
I have no
right?
That was true anyway, but yeah, I think you can add a degree of excitement regarding that.
Probably wanted to play today. He was warming up pregame.
Certainly.
There were people wondering, like, whoa, type of thing.
Well, hey, I mean, he figured he saw Howard last week, at the last minute, allegedly get thrown into the game for Kansas State. Maybe he thought maybe he could do the same thing. I don't know.
I think he's going to play. I know you don't think. I think he's going to play.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying without knowing his status, without having seen him in practice.
Correct, which we won't.
I am not confident in that happening. And you know, granted, I'm somebody who's always lean consistent. I said Mackenzie Milton would never play again, and he did. What do I know? You know, it's the same kind of concept.
But I do think him coming back could help them get over this loss, because this is...
Yeah, there is some mental positives there. You're 100%.
Now, the irony of this, I am standing next to a man who, I'm going to do the math correct on this, in the last 8 months, you got to see a 35-10 today, a 25-point comeback here in the fourth quarter. What was the margin Jacksonville came back against the Chargers in that playoff game?
That would be 27-0 at the half. Yes, that was...
This guy, if he's in the building, the game's not over. That's my new cliche.
I'm not a Baylor fan just because I'm wearing a green tie.
No.
This is student the game branding. Settle down.
That's incredible that you have witnessed two insane comebacks. Like the NFL one's historic. Is that I think it's the biggest playoff comeback? One of them?
It is, yeah. It's the second biggest behind Buffalo. And then, I mean, listen, if you were watching the Jags at any length without getting too far off the topic, the saying "it was always the Jags" became a thing in the back half of 2022. So that was obviously the biggest comeback you mentioned. But I mean, listen, and I think any time to apply this is worthwhile. And were Jeff Sharon here, he would say something about, hey, the other guys are on scholarship too, you know. And I think we definitely saw that in play tonight.
Does not make it feel better, though.
Oh, of course not.
No. Like, I think fans would rather have just got, would you rather get blown out than blow a lead like that?
No, you can't say that because
I
if
don't know, man.
let me tell you why that can't happen here is if that had happened tonight, everybody would be talking about how UCF doesn't belong in the Big 12, period, point blank. At least in this case, we have a scenario where the defense is UCF made you look so simple that they trifled with you to blow the game.
It's going to be hard to get over. I mean, it's a hard one to get over.
I'm not saying that as if that's
You're doing good,
sort of a poultice, but, you know.
I mean, it's wild. We're going to have more on blackandgoldbanneret.com. He's going to have his recap. We're still going to argue about this on the phone, on the car ride, because we can't argue in the press box because they're still working.
So will I.
We might have other content. I think Drew's going to have a column about where this brutal loss ranks, as he's seen a plenty.
He'll have plenty to say off the cuff, that's for sure.
Very good. Well said. Well done. We'll have a podcast at some point. Boy, that'll be a fun podcast last week. Sure. Positives. Men's soccer's ranked third.
Hey!
Volleyball did well. I got a ring.
Yes, softball was honored.
Softball was honored before the game. 2013, George looked good.
I mean, yeah.
This was a fun day for three quarters. And then it wasn't. For Kyle Nash, I'm Eric Lopez. Keep it here on Black and Gold Banneret. Follow us on all the social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube channel, you name it. You got it. And look for his recap of this historic day in UCF football history, as UCF unfortunately goes down to Baylor in stunning fashion, 36-35.
Until next time, class dismissed.